Good evening, everybody. Meteorologist David Paul with you. Meteorologist Tim Pendages with us as well. Hey, Tim.
Hey, how's it going? You know, we're tracking this severe weather threat, David. A line of storms that has been a little slow to get going, but now we're starting to see the drop south headed towards Houston within the next hour or two.
So we've been looking at several different computer model runs all afternoon, and some of them were suggesting that we would finally get a push from this section of the line almost due south across the area, and that appears to be what's kind of happening.
And we were talking about this on air earlier in our newscast, that it's almost been two separate rounds of storms. See the first round that moved through the Cleveland area over 59 earlier, a little break over Lake Livingston now, and now a second round coming out through. This one looks to be a little stronger, I think, too.
So I think this first section here that went across northern Grimes through Walker, Polk San Jacinto, that fed on that first early round of energy up there. And at times that was a severe thunderstorm that went through Walker County, Polk San Jacinto County. And now the second round is feeding on that energy that's back to the west. And in addition to that, it's putting out some pretty good rain totals here.
It really is. If we look back at the last 6 hours, radar indicated totals, you can see a lot of colors up here indicating 4, 5, 5.5 inches overall so far.
Right, look at the colors here, 4 to 5, yellow to orange. So we have several spots up here, Madisonville near Bryan, that are definitely getting that amount. And you know, this is a part of the area that's not in drought officially, but everybody in southeast Texas could use the rain.
Yeah, and thankfully this whole line looks to stay at least somewhat put together by the time it reaches the coast, which could use that drink of water.
Galveston, I know we're talking about you, so we do think that this is going to last all the way down to the coast, and we'll take a look at the forecast in just a little bit. Lightning has played a big factor in this as well.
It really has. It's been just electric storms.
And when we see lightning, that's a very important indicator for Tim and I, because that tells us that we're getting convection. We're getting up and down motion through the vertical column. We know there's convection because to get lightning, you've got to polarize the cloud. And to polarize it, to get your charges, your negative charges to the top, positive charges to the bottom, or vice versa sometimes, you've got to have vertical motion to separate them. So that vertical motion wrings out all the energy in the atmosphere.
Yeah, and check this out. This is 10 minutes of lightning data. For just this queried area here, Brenham area, Navasota, over to Hockley and Conroe. We're clocking 419 strikes in the last 10 minutes.
Now 427.
Yeah.
And we're getting the lightning, a tremendous amount of heavy rain. It's moving, but it's not severe. We're staying just below severe criteria. Now, we could still see wind gusts as the line approaches of 40 to 60 miles an hour. We could still see hail, perhaps pea to nickel to dime to quarter size, maybe. And we had some of that earlier, but not a whole lot.
Yeah, hail right now is not so much of a problem. In fact, look at our hail tracker. There's a few spots here.
Yeah, okay, right in here.
Montgomery, we've got a little tiny section over there.
Yeah.
Let's put a number on there. It's right around pea size, like you were saying.
Yeah. Okay, so here's 1097. So I know a little bit about this. Here's the Bentwater area. So Bentwater, you're just in an area where you could be seeing some small hail, maybe up to pea size. But that's about the worst of it, and that's not big enough to do any significant damage to your car, which I know, if you're like me, you're thinking about protecting your car. There's another spot here. So again, the leading edge of that thunderstorm right here in western Washington County. That's to the west of Brenham. Maybe some pea-sized hail here, but again, not a whole lot of big hail. Mostly this is just a whole lot of lightning, thunder, brief heavy rain as the storms go through, everybody getting a drink of water. And aside from it being a mess on the roads, that's about the worst of it. Okay, so you're going to go back in time here and look at the hail tracks.
Yeah, because the hail aspect of this, I think, is really past, especially for this line now. It may redevelop later, but it's had a history of producing slightly larger hail just to the west of the Brenham area.
Look at that. That went right down 290, Highway 290, just followed it. So I bet some of the cars in here were like, oh, no.
Yeah.
There's hail. Just to the west, just to the east of Round Top. Pretty good hail there. Maybe we went up to nickel size there. What that's suggesting.
In a lot of these areas, this is the last 3 hours of rainfall in those same spots. Saw some totals getting up and over an inch and a half there.
Yeah. That's about what the models were putting out on the north side, 1 to 2 inches. Although, as we pointed out earlier, there are a couple of spots further north that have had 3 to maybe 4 inches of rain out of this.
Right, and all this rain is going to be moving a little bit farther to the south. Now, so we talked about the hail. Let's talk about our wind threat. So we've got a tool here on our radar that is called velocity, and it kind of shows where the air particles are moving either towards or away the radar site. So when you see this legend here, toward and away is towards our radar site here near League City.
So that's a great, so here's the radar site. So cool colors would be particles, raindrops, that are moving toward that radar site. So these green areas are raindrops that are moving toward the radar site. And then these brighter colors, the hot colors, are moving away from the radar site. And that's important because it can help detect rotation.
Yeah, and this is the perfect tool for that. And also we can pinpoint where we're seeing the threat for straight line winds, which is what we think is going to be the biggest threat. So here's a perfect example of that, David. Out to the west of the Conroe area, you can see that sharp divide of reds and greens. It's elongated. It's not a couplet. So we're seeing that more so of that wind moving in one general direction.
It's linear. And when you see a pattern like this, it's almost always straight line winds that are the threat and not a tornado. We need to see these colors much more focused together. But straight line winds, so this is above the surface, maybe at this point, maybe 1,000 feet above the surface, but 54 mile an hour winds, you transpose that down to the surface, 40 mile an hour wind gusts.
Certainly.
Easy estimate there.
And that's all moving through the Montgomery area. So certainly a very gusty line of storms that's coming on through there. Not so much a hail threat like we just mentioned, but the wind and the heavy blinding rain and, of course, the lightning.
And so all of this leading edge where we got these 40 mile an hour wind gusts, that's just now about to reach Conroe proper right there on I-45. It's not far from Spring and the Woodlands. Just reaching Hempstead and Waller now. There's the leading edge of that potential for 40 mile an hour wind gust. You know, if it's trash night where you are, if you got some loose items outside, you might want to bring them in. They could get picked up. Tomball, it's just that's great. So Tim's put the loop on here so you can see those winds pushing in. That is definitely straight line wind threat here, moving toward Conroe, Woodlock. So you got cut and shoot in here, Willis as well. Heads up, Montgomery County. Those are gusty, strong winds heading in your direction.
And you can see a batch of really gusty winds, too, out by Courtney and Montgomery. That's taking more of a southerly trend. So eventually Spring, Cypress, and Tomball going to get into that wind, too.
Look at how that's bulging out toward Hempstead. So we've got really two sections here. One moving southeast, one moving south-southeast. And both of them, that really looks like about 40 mile an hour winds. So that can definitely knock down a little limb. This is at least a slight power outage threat as well.
And I wanted to put the radar on there because I bet you this is the collapsing thunderstorm.
Yeah.
You know, so we're getting the outflow boundary along that whole line there. So that's pretty interesting.
Collapsing thunderstorm, little meso high building in back behind it.
Yeah.
The very sharp leading edge here. You can definitely see the leading edge of where the threat is. Now it's below severe limits, but it's close. So take all of this seriously, stay inside, stay off the roads. Again, we're not looking at any big emergency weather, but this is a messy thunderstorm night that we're looking at here. And, you know, moving forward, so we're not too far from downtown. This looks like this has accelerated our timeline a little bit.
I think so too, and you can see some patchy little cells flaring up ahead of it. This was happening earlier north of Conroe, so the whole line is sliding south. Really the brunt of the real active weather, though, is near and west of Conroe at the time.
Right, so here's Austin County, so New Ulm, Cat Spring, Industry. You're getting into lightning and thunder if it hasn't already arrived in your neighborhood. Waller County, kids out at Prairie View getting a thunderstorm right now up to 90. And it's just, there's the leading edge into the Cypress area right now. So here's 99 connector on northwest Harris County, just into the leading edge of that gusty wind and heavy rain. It doesn't last long, but this should put out a good quarter to a half inch at least through these neighborhoods.
And those big fat raindrops too coming down from that radar there. I want to draw on here again, David, the lightning, because that's always a big crowd pleaser when you can see how much lightning is going on, because you're sitting at home and it's just flashing all over the place. Dogs are freaking out with the thunder and lightning. So, I mean, these lightning strikes are intense here. We've got numbers 387.
If you have dogs at home, lightning strikes become the most important part of the weathercast.
Oh, yeah.
When you've got thunderstorms coming in. So 300, almost 400 strikes here. That's almost, you know, this strobe light effect here across Brenham and Industry right now. It's very intense. A lot of that's cloud to ground. So this is something you want to stay inside and stay out of.
And when you also see the ratio of positive to negative strikes being slightly higher for positive, that's a little bit of an indication that this cell is not weakening just yet. It may still be on the strengthening side.
The positive strikes are usually the stronger, more powerful lightning strikes. And you can see there's a higher number of positive than negative. So to Tim's point, that tells us that the storm it may or may not be intensifying, but it's certainly not in a process of weakening right now. So these storms are staying quite strong.
Absolutely. You know, let's throw some storm tracks on here on this line as it drops south. I think the last time I saw it, it was moving at like 45 miles an hour. So we'll put a storm track on that here and put some town names on when it's going to be heading to where you live.
Yeah, let's push that south,
all the way
southeast.
into Houston there.
There we go. Yeah, take it all the way to Houston. So this is Okay, so now Houston 8:35. So earlier, the last time I put a timeline on that, it was putting it into Houston a little after 9.
Yeah, so it has sped up a little bit.
It is accelerating.
Yeah.
So this is gonna come on through here, and we need the rain. That's good. We don't need the associated problems that could come with this, but the rain is all going to be beneficial. Eagle Lake 8:41, Sugarland reaching you at least by 9 o'clock, if not a little bit before 9 o'clock. Sugarland, as this line of storms is what we call collapsing and accelerating to the south and southeast pretty quickly.
It's almost like it's falling off a cliff. It's gaining momentum forward.
Right.
You know, it's rolling forward almost.
It's
you know?
gaining momentum. That's exactly what, it has its own mass, and you get that moving, and
Yeah.
it starts to go, and it definitely moves under its own weight at some point.
Yeah, and with the rain and the lightning and thunder that'll arrive, is also going to be the wind. So I just want to show the velocity again, because when you start to see the bright greens, that's the straight line winds coming in the direction towards the radar site. So let's throw some numbers on there again in the Navasota area.
And Randy, if you get any comments or questions that are pertinent, just holler them out at us, all right? You can just stop us. So our digital director's right here with us as well. That's the leading edge of the strongest winds. So New Waverly, Willis, Cut and Shoot, Conroe, Pinehurst, Magnolia. You guys are just on the edge of that approaching gusty wind.
Yeah, and 50, 60 mile per hour winds clocked by radar, and as you mentioned earlier, aloft.
Right, that's about 1,000 feet above the surface.
Yeah.
But you transpose that down to the surface, and that usually would give us wind speeds of about 35 to 40 mile an hour gusts at the surface, at least. So that could cause some small limbs to snap. There is a power outage risk as the leading edge goes through your neighborhood.
Yeah, and here, just look at the intense colors on this. And you have the black shades, the really dark red.
Boy, Lake Conroe just getting lambasted right now with heavy rain.
And then on top of that, the lightning too. So you can see the heavy rain there north of Conroe, and then the lightning too on top of it.
Yeah.
That's not as much as I would have thought to have seen.
I wonder how many
It's a little
strikes.
low.
Can you put a query box? Let's query that. Let's see how many strikes are right in that zone. Well,
170.
almost 170. That's a lot of strikes in 10 minutes.
Yeah, for that small of an area too.
Yeah. I wonder if we should move ahead and let's take a look at how this is forecast to move across the area tonight.
Sure. Yeah, so here's that line now. We're getting hourly updates now on her model data here.
And this is actually pretty good. So this is the 7 o'clock up. This is where the computer thought the line would be at 7 o'clock. And it's done a pretty good job. Maybe it's a little bit ahead of schedule, but it's within 10 miles of where it is right now. So this is verified right off. It's initiated well.
Yeah, and here we are an hour later, so starting to see those little clusters of downpours developing over Houston within the Beltway at this point.
Yeah, that's that warm air coming off the Gulf feeding into that line. Look at that line staying strong into 9 o'clock right into downtown. So 8:30, 9 o'clock, that's when the leading edge and perhaps some gusty wind enough to maybe knock out a little bit of power comes into downtown, 8:30 to 9 o'clock.
And then we progress a little bit farther into the overnight, 10:30, breaking apart a little bit.
Look how quickly the leading edge gets to the coast.
Yeah, it's probably kind of that little more stable at maritime air.
Earlier runs had that, they weren't taking it to the coast like that until 11:30 or so. So this is really
speeding up a
racing.
little bit.
So that kind of tells me this is a straight line wind threat this evening.
Absolutely, yeah. Not so much concern with hail. It's really going to be the straight line winds, and that's highlighted in our threats that we'll show you in a second. But rainfall. Here we go, 2 inches in some spots, very beneficial.
So that would be a godsend. I mean, no kidding. Pearland, 3/4 of an inch. Hobby, more than a half inch. Crystal Beach, 1 1/3 inches. That would be wonderful if that verifies, because Drought Monitor came out today, and it's these coastal counties that are in extreme drought right now.
Severe drought,
Severe drought.
Yeah, that hasn't really improved much in the last couple of weeks.
So any rain we can get to the coast, we're rooting for you. We're trying to get it down to the coast for you guys.
Yeah, and here's our threat, strong winds.
Randy, go ahead.
Yeah, is there a flooding threat with this?
So the great question, it looks like the only flooding threat with this would be some minor street ponding. We've been dry, all the bayous and creeks are at the bottom of their channel, so 1, 2, 3, even 4 or 5 inches of rain right now we could handle before having any type of flooding problem. So great question.
That was Brittany Bennett.
Thank you, Brittany. Good question. No, just some minor street ponding, wet roads. I think that's the worst of it tonight.
And you look at the 6-hour rain totals, so we're up to like 3.5 inches and 4 inches in some spots. Spread out over 6 hours is manageable.
That's the key. It's been spread out over 6 hours. So even rain total, even if we were to get 4 inches of rain in downtown right now, it would cause some street ponding, but it's not going to cause any type of significant threat to homes or businesses or things like that. And I'm not expecting to get 3 or 4 inches in downtown. We'll get a 1/2 inch to 1 inch and that'll be it.
Yeah. Any other questions?
We're looking at timing. You mentioned speeding up. Somebody asked, what time is it going to be along the coast?
Let's walk through the timeline one more time. Okay, so here we are, going into 8 o'clock. Columbus, I-10 out west, Tomball, just reaching Spring in the Woodlands, Kingwood, just north of Liberty and up to Cleveland. So that's where we are at 8 o'clock. So that's in an hour from now. Racing into downtown by 9 o'clock. So that's Sugar Land, Missouri City, downtown. That's out to leading edge of folks to Baytown, already in Liberty by the time we get to 9 o'clock. But then what is interesting to me is how quickly it reaches the coast. So to answer your question specifically for the coast, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
By 10:30, it's reached the Galveston coast.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of questions about timing. You know, when's it going to be in Brazoria County? When's it going to be in Mission Bend?
Yep.
So I think that timeline really helped a lot of people out.
All right, there you go. And then after that, it quickly clears. And even before midnight, we're done.
Yeah.
But we're not done with the heat, are we?
We are not even close. It is going to be something for the next couple days.
This is the thing. So this is going to put down some much needed rain. The soil's going to be wet. And then Mother Nature is going to turn the oven on. And we're going to go to the mid-90s. In fact, if we can skip to tomorrow's forecast. Well, yeah, here's the next 3 days. I mean, look at this. So imagine everything's wet. And then we go to 93 tomorrow. Then 95 on Saturday, 96 on Mother's Day Sunday.
Yeah, and then you've got heat indices that'll be like 10 degrees hotter than that. What does it feel like?
We haven't had heat like this so far this year. So heat index is over 100, maybe even as early as tomorrow, but definitely Saturday and Sunday. Yeah. Any type of outdoor activity, coaches, parents, don't overexert the kids. They're not used to it. You're not used to it. You're going to get dehydrated really quickly. Yeah. Water is your best friend. You've got to sweat to stay cool in this type of weather, and you need water in your body so you can sweat. That's the key to staying safe in the hot weather. And get into the AC, make sure you're cooling yourself off. And so that's what's coming as we get into the weekend. And I mean, it's Houston, and I love it, and I love the summers. And part of me doesn't love the summers because of the amount of sweat.
It gets a little too hot.
Yeah.
And also to note, when it's going to be all hot for the next couple of days, we have no sight of rain after today.
It's a good point. Look at how quickly this is approaching Houston.
Yeah.
This is way ahead of schedule now.
Mm-hmm.
We're already. So here we are. What are we looking at? 7:20?
Right now.
Yeah, 7:21.
That's the internal clock still works really well.
Or you just look at that.
Oh, okay. I didn't cheat. I wouldn't do that. But yeah, okay. So this is that line. That leading edge of storms is going to be reaching maybe downtown by 8 o'clock. So this is really exciting. So this is going to be coming in here pretty quickly. Again, not severe. A lot of lightning and thunder, brief heavy rain, wind gusts maybe to 40 are the biggest threat.
Yep.
But I think other than that, it's just a stormy night in Houston, and we're going to get away with it without too many problems.
And something to note here, too, there's no watches and no warnings currently up for our area. But there's one just outside. With the straight line winds, maybe we'll get up to criteria to warrant a warning. Yeah. We'll have to watch it, especially as it heads into the metro center there.
All right, gang. Any more questions?
Just one more. Yolanda.
Hi, Yolanda.
Is asking if the wind is going to cause any power outages in the Dayton area.
So it's possible. So in Dayton, Liberty, you may see a wind gust of 40. You may get enough to knock a limb down that could, if you're unlucky and it lands on a power line, could cause a minor power outage. But I think the threat is minor, but it's not zero. So really everywhere across the southeast Texas. And so here's our power outage risk tracker.
Yeah, not much.
Yeah, not. It says not much of a risk. 40-mile-an-hour gusts. Okay, maybe a few branches hit a power line, but the power outage risk is low. That's a great question. We're going to update again here. We're planning on doing it at 9 o'clock. And then, of course, we're live, Tim and I, and Pat Kavlin is in our storm tracker, and he will be on the leading edge of the line of storms live on KHOU 11 News at 10 o'clock. We will see you then for our live update on the TV side.